Can you help me tease out these numbers? Apple said it was a record, but numbers always grow, don't they? What does a record mean? What did it consist of?
Yeah, every year that Apple's been releasing the iPhone, they've hit a new record, and this year they jumped to 13 million from 10. But you're right, this includes China, which analysts say is equal to as much as 3 million of that number. And so in some ways, if you back out the China figure, the numbers are about flat. And so you did see Apple's stock today, kind of as investors teased that out. The company's stock did fall a bit.
John Jackson in Boston, help us understand what the market looks like in China right now. There are two different markets. There's a high-end and a low-end market. Is the low-end market oversaturated at this point?
The low-end market may well be oversaturated. I think a couple of important figures to think about is if we look at Q2 of 2014, this is calendar year Q2, to Q2 of 2015, we saw the high-end market, that's $400 U.S. selling price and above, in China almost double from 8.8% of volumes to 16.4% of volumes. If you look really at where Apple plays in that market, that kind of $600 and above threshold, that market more than doubled, right? Went from 4.9% to 12.3% in that one-year span. The indication is that the high end of the Chinese market is really almost all Apple. So, they are killing it at the high end of the Chinese market, and they're expanding it. And let's not forget that this is a company that has been in the business of putting wind in its own sails for quite some time now. So, the low end of the market is, I would say, yes, oversaturated. You have a couple of rock stars down there, Xiaomi being the most conspicuous of them of late. But I think it's pretty clear Apple doesn't really want to play there.
Let's stick with the high end for a second. In China, one of the things that we've seen, industrial numbers plummeting, equity indexes plummeting, crackdown on luxury by the party. What does the future of the high-end market look like in China?
So I'm not sure there's a stop to it, to be honest. If you kind of look at these incremental numbers, we have, Apple's numbers in China as a percentage of all iPhone shipments. And Adam, I think, is right on with this 3 million number. Last three quarters, Q3 last year, 13.4% of that market, growing to 17.8% of that market in Q4, and then to 23.7% in Q1, to 24.6% in Q2. So Apple continues to grow this market. Regulations and economic headwinds be darned. Obviously, we'll see what happens in the coming quarter.
Adam, should we think of Apple as just an iPhone company?
I mean, it's without a doubt its most important product. I mean, it is the center of their universe, and a lot of the other stuff that they do kind of orbits around it at this point. It accounts for more than 60% of their revenue and an even bigger portion of their profits. And so everything is kind of centered around that. But that percentage of their business has been growing, and so they've been trying to offset that with some other areas. They introduced the Apple Watch, but that still hasn't really taken off. And the iPad sales have also been falling, and so you're seeing iPhone take up a bigger and bigger piece of Apple's business.
How important is the launch weekend? Is a new iPhone a little bit like a Hollywood movie? Do we watch the launch weekend to see what it's going to make overall?
It's an important metric, but it's not the most important one. As we were talking about, these figures were somewhat skewed because of the introduction of China. What will be a better barometer of how the device is selling will come in January when Apple releases the figures for how they did in the holiday quarter. The company has been really concentrating its releases around the last 3 months of the year, and so how they do in the end of the year will really be the best metric of how the company is doing for the period.
John, what is the next likely growth market for Apple? We've been saying for a while that Apple's really a China play, but is it an emerging markets play? Where does it go next?
Well, you just had Dr. Aghi on, and he was describing, I think, what's pretty clear to everybody is that there are volume opportunities, if you're an optimist, that continue to hide in plain sight in these emerging markets. So just to give you some perspective, in 2014, China was 10x. Right, China's volumes were 10x the next largest emerging market, which wasn't even India, by the way. It was Russia, and then it was Brazil. And so India is kind of this distant fourth. So again, if you're optimistically inclined, there's a lot of upside left to be mined out of these markets. But as Adam said, I think Apple understands very well that it has this dependency right now, and so there's an imperative to do for the home, for the car, for the wrist, for the wallet, what it's done for the iPhone.